When I started mounting my signals, I drilled a 3/16" hole through the 4 inches of foam in the tabletop. Then I inserted a straw. The straw provided me with a nice slick, clean bore that allowed me to slide the wires down through and the stem of the cantilever. Now the cantilever stood up and was very secure and looked very nice, but all the bare wires were under the table. These are just little 30 gauge wires, very tiny, hard to work with. I decided it was going to be impossible to try to solder or crimp any kind of a terminal laying on my back trying to do this all overhead on these little tiny wires. So I abandoned this approach. The cantilevers are too small to allow the installation of the LEDs and their dropping resistors. So the dropping resistors needed to be installed externally. So I came up with this little design, hopefully to make it easier to install. I glued 2 terminal strips onto pieces of board and then mounted the resistors between them. That gave me 2 open terminals, one on each side of the resistor, so that I could terminate the LED to one side and the computer lead to the other side. Seemed to work out pretty good for me. After fabricating all my terminal strips, I then purchased these little eyelets to solder onto the end of the wires, the little 30 gauge wires, one for each of the LEDs and a common to feed the positive side of the power supply. Of course, these were too big to fit through that little 3/16" hole, so I had to change my approach, and I elected to drill a 3/4 inch hole down through the tabletop. This allowed me to feed the little terminal eyelets down through the table. Here you can see them hanging below, readily available, easy for me now to mount my terminal strip and terminate each wire to the terminal. The problem with this approach was that, as you can see, the cantilever actually just fell into the 3/4 inch hole, so I needed to adapt my tabletop to compensate for this. A platform for the cantilever to sit on was to cut pieces of balsa wood. Now I had to notch each piece of balsa wood so that the stem of the cantilever would fit down through the wood. So I layered these in opposite directions. I put one in first and then glued it in place, reversed the direction I put the second one in, and put it on top of the first one, which left the notch, but it left the notch on top of already exposed wood. And then I kept the little piece of wood that I'd cut out and glued it back into the notch, making the base appear to be one solid piece again. This stood the cantilever back up and made it pretty secure. Here you can see how I notched out the foam and recessed the wood piece down into the table to make it level with the table surface. And now it's all ready to be glued in place and landscaped in, and you'll never know that piece of wood is there. The next slide here just shows you a little bit of the scale, what it looks like to have an engine sitting under the signal, so that you can see that it's really not as tiny as it looks. It fits in well with an HO train.